in the other two volumes, in the third volume, I'm sounding the alarm because it is letting us know that Bible prophecy is happening right now before our eyes. And it's not happening in modern day Israel. It's not. And I can prove it. And anybody, any Israelite camp leader, I don't care who you are, and I've said this multiple times, I've called them out for debate. Um, and they have said, well, you got this guy, Ron Dalton, you got people, or they might say, you got this guy here, and he's saying that the land of Canaan is in Africa and it's not in the Middle East. And they'll even interview Black Jews or Black Israelites in Israel, like in Dimona or just in Israel in general, and say, what do you have to say about that? People saying the true land of Israel or Canaan is it's not where you're at now. It's in sub-Saharan Africa. And they will say all this stuff like, well, Ryan, I'll debate you, but you cannot use your research. You cannot use your research, Ryan. Like everything you put in your books, in your movies, you can't use it. You just have to use the Bible. I'm like, you guys are that scared to have a discussion on where is the true land of Canaan, the land of Israel? Is it in the Middle East, or is it in sub-Saharan Africa? And I said this multiple times. I've said this to the leaders of Israel, Bishop Nathaniel, Elder Rakar, Pastor Bowie, Pastor Dow, uh, Guerrilla Hebrew, and others, Benaiah and Rabbi Quete Omar and Zion Lex and Divine Prospect. You know, I've laid it all out. The Watchman and his wife, every Israelite leader. I said, listen, this is an important topic we need to talk about. We need to discuss this. And don't get scared about the word debate, because at the end of the day, a debate is a discussion about two opposing viewpoints. It's an argument on whether we believe this, we believe that. And when done in an academic setting and manner, you present your facts and evidence, and I present mine, and then we do cross examination, asking the person on the hot seat the questions. They give the answers, and then they get a chance to ask me questions. This is the same thing they do in a court of law. This is the same thing even in South Africa, and it's something that's been done for the test of time. You have a mediator or a judge or commissioner, and he sits and he listens to this person talk, and then he listens to this person talk, and then you have your opposing arguments and your questions. You know, and this is what we need right now today, because we know that the Bible is real if we believe we're Israelites and we teach out of it. So then, if the Bible is telling us that in the future that non-Greek, non-Roman, Japhetic nations are going to have their eyes and their interest solely on the land of Canaan or the land of Israel. And these nations are going to come to this land where the Israelites dwell in their land, and they're going to have an evil intention, evil agenda, scheme. And their agenda in Ezekiel 38 is to steal, to plunder, to loot, to exploit. And I don't see nowhere else that these other non-Shemitic nations are coming to a place to steal, plunder, exploit than sub-Saharan Africa. They're not going to Israel. There's nothing here. I mean, people in Israel are coming to Africa to get all this stuff. So we can't look at the world map and say, well, the Russians are the Hamites. No, the Russians are the descendants of Shem. No, the Chinese are the descendants of Shem. No, the Chinese are the descendants of Ham. No, The people in India, who are they? Are they Hamites? No. Are they the descendants of Shem? Could be, but not all of them. And when you look at today's white Arabs and white Jews and the European Union and the West, United States of America, the United States of America is not the old Romans, meaning that the people that conquered Europe back in the 5th and 6th century AD, they conquered the Roman Empire. They conquered the Romans and the Greeks. Another nation did. Another nation came from afar and conquered these lands. Like you can call them Germanic people, barbarians, Gothics, but they came from another area beyond the Danube River, beyond the Volga River and the Don River and Ukraine and the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, the Sea of the Khazars. They came from beyond these areas and they overthrew and conquered the Roman Empire and they adopted Christianity as their religion. They no longer were pagans like the Vikings. They're originally all these nations were pagans, and then they adopted Christianity as they started to come into these Christian lands and conquer the Christian lands. And so we have to understand that the Europeans, the European nations, and the United States, as well as the white Arabs and the white Jews and all these other nations like Ukraine and Russia and China, that they are not the descendants of the Greeks and Romans. But yet we see even the Pakistani, Afghanistani, they are all coming to sub-Saharan Africa to do exactly what it's saying in Ezekiel 38. And we know that the people in sub-Saharan Africa have the same Y DNA as us, E1B1A. So we can't call them Hamites if they got our same DNA because that means we are Hamites. We can't get our DNA test and it says, Iwando, Yaounde, Bakongo, Bamaleke, Tikar, Temne, Mande, Igbo, Fan, Ewe, Ashanti, Fanti, God. We can't see our DNA results and say, oh, okay, this is in West and Central Africa. And say, well, they're not us. We're not them. Well, you got the same DNA as them. And then say, well, these ain't the Israelites. They are the Israelites. It's more of them in sub-Saharan Africa than it is in America and the Caribbean. So there are Israelites right now in sub-Saharan Africa, a lot of them, millions of them. And in their land, like the Congo, Uganda, Burundi, Cameroon, Nigeria, Zambia, Angola, South Africa, Malawi, Kenya, all these Ghana, all these countries are filled with Israelites. And these other nations, the Chinese, they're going straight to these lands. They're not going to Morocco. They're not going to Tunisia. They're not going to Libya. They're not going to Europe to Egypt. Russia and the West and China and India, they don't care about the north part of Africa, the desert. They are coming to sub-Saharan Africa and they're getting rich. And don't think that they're paying for all this stuff. They're not going to the store and saying, let me get 15 tons of gold. Let me get 15 tons of cobalt. Let me get 15 tons of uranium and iridium. And by the way, throwing some silver and copper and iron and lead and zinc. They're not doing that. They're not doing that. They're coming into these lands and they're walking out of these lands and they're sending this stuff by boat and by plane back to their country. And a lot of times they didn't pay for the value of what the stuff is that they're putting on the boats and ships and sending it back to their country, which equates to wealth. Because we all know that if I dug up a ton of gold in Zimbabwe and I took it to America and I took it to the jeweler and they had a sign saying cash for gold. And I said, I got a ton of gold, sir. He said, okay. He says, let me check it out and see how pure it is. He checks it out. He says, this is pure gold, 99%. And I said, okay, how much am I going to give for this? He said, well, you got to give me at least a couple weeks or weeks or so to get the money, but you're looking at $5 million. This is worth. And he said, okay, well, let me sign the contract and I'll wait and you give me the money. Okay, let's go. These other nations ain't doing that, and we can't do that. We can't go to Africa and just dig up all this gold and diamonds and beryllium and then come back to America and then cash it in for money. We can't do that. The other nations are doing that. And the people that live in the land that are the true rightful owners of this wealth in the ground, they're poor. They're not making any money from what's in the ground, the Congolese people. No. So who's making all the money and why are they taking it? And why is it in the Bible? Yes, it is in the Bible. And that's the whole thing that I put out in the movie, because if you understand the movie and who the players are in Ezekiel 38, then you have to acknowledge that, wait a minute, this means that the land of Canaan is in sub-Saharan Africa, and these Israelites are there too. And these hard-headed Israelites will say, Ron, well, this is after the millennial reign. This is in Revelation chapter 20. I say, well, okay, the millennial reign in Revelation 20, who reigns with Christ in the millennial reign? Are they people that are alive and healthy, or people that have been beheaded because they did not take the mark of the beast? People that are beheaded. This is the first resurrection. They had their heads chopped off. They're no longer human beings anymore. They're no longer mortal. They are the ones that reign with Christ for 1,000 years. So don't tell me that before and after the millennial reign, that there's no living Israelites on the earth in the land of Canaan, so that these armies can go fight a people that are that Gog and Magog is going to fight ghosts and spirits, people that have already died. It doesn't say that. So we have to stop making excuses as to why we can't accept that the true land of Israel, the land of Canaan, is not in the Middle East. It's in sub-Saharan Africa. Reality is showing us that right now.
Man, Ron, hearing that, brother, instantly I think about in the Congo, right? These things that we have, iPhones, right? From all the materials that's taken out of there, those mines. In the Bible, why do you think all of this is happening in that area in the Congo right now? Because it's major, but not too many people are even talking about this right now.
Well, this is the thing. The Bakongos say that their land and their capital, they called it Zita Dianza. Zita, Zita Dyanza. Zita Dianza. And it means the center of the world. Jerusalem is at the center of the world, surrounded by the nations. It says this in Ezekiel.
Mhm.
And to be in a land that is the center of the world, as is Jerusalem, you have to look at the scientific uh, definition of the center of the world. Well, you have to have 0 degree latitude, 0 degree longitude. The equator is a true scientific line that nobody can deny. It separates the northern hemisphere from the southern hemisphere, and it cuts through the Congo and Uganda, exactly where the fighting is happening at. And the ancient first meridian longitudinal line was cutting through Egypt, following the course of the Nile River all the way down to the border of the Congo and Uganda, where you have the mountains of the moon, or the Rwenzori Mountains at. And so in the ancient time, the Egyptians, the Pacific Islanders, the Bantu people, the Israelites, their 0 degree latitude and longitude was in Central Africa. And many of the Israelites that are in Africa now, whether they're in East Africa, South Africa, West Africa, even the Pacific Islanders in Melanesia, Solomon Islands, Bougainville, Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, Cook Islands, Marshall Islands, Fiji, Samoa, Hawaii, New Zealand. They say that to get to the islands that they are at right now, that they left Central Africa. You say, well, where? Where in Central Africa? They say that the Congo, Tanzania border where Lake Tanganyika is. Well, oh, okay, Central Africa. This is what they say, and they say that they are the Israelites. People have WhatsApp me and called me from these other islands. Like, like they're like, I'm talking to people in Samoa, Australia, New Zealand, the Cook Islands, Indonesia, Melanesia, Papua New Guinea. They're actually texting me on WhatsApp. And then we're talking to each other. And they're like, yeah, we're the tribe of Benjamin, we're tribe of Judah, tribe of, these different tribes. And this is our ancient traditions and customs. And when Christianity came to our island, they told us that everything we were doing was pagan and it was wrong. And they made us adopt these Christian ways. And our ancestors told us we are the Israelites and that we left Africa and got on boats and came to the east. And I said, why'd y'all come to the east? Well, we had invasions and uh, battles with other nations in the land, and we left. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what other nations were coming into the land or y'all were battling with that y'all said, to heck with this, we're out of here. And y'all fled. They fled. They didn't flee because they just got bored. No, they fled because they were tired of the fighting and the invasions and the besieging, and they wanted to take their clans and tribes to a distant land to keep practicing the traditions and customs of the creator, of the Most High. And this is why they're there right now. And so when I look at the things happening in the Congo, I see that for decades, they've been the United Nations peacekeepers have been there. There's no peace.
Yeah.
And these rebels are getting their military equipment and ammunition and gear and weapons, and they're getting fed. They're getting fed. Somebody's feeding them, somebody's how if they're not working a job, then how are they affording to eat, live, fight, have the weapons and the ammunition and the gear? Government, the Tanzanian government, and everybody else is trying to help defeat the M23 rebels and the ISIS affiliates, the ADF. And they're using a front man to do all the dirty work, to be the face on the news of who is causing all this conflict. Yeah, you can blame it on Rwanda, but at the end of the day, somebody has a vested interest in what's in the eastern region of the Congo. They have an interest. Because if it was just a barren land with nothing there, just a jungle, with animals and nothing, why would they even care? But the Congo has a spiritual significance to it. Not only does it have minerals, but there's a spiritual significance to the Congo and the land that was formerly the kingdom of the Congo. And it's because in these lands uh, was once the territories of the 12 tribes of Israel, the temple, Jerusalem, the land of Canaan, and all the prophecies that states that Jerusalem shall be encompassed by armies, and it says that, and the people of Jerusalem shall be taken captive by the sword. Christ says this. Christ says this in Luke 21:24. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down or downtrodden of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. If you are a downtrodden people, you are an oppressed people. Does not mean that scripture does not mean that they came and replaced all of you. No, when it says downtrodden, trodden down, it's the same word. That word, you can Google it. Downtrodden means you are an oppressed people, meaning that whoever is oppressing you is treating you badly and harshly. They're treating you with harshness and badness. And if you know the history of the slave trades, the beginning of the slave trades in America started from the Kingdom of the Congo. They took the Portuguese took slaves from what today is called Angola, and they put them on a ship. And then while the Portuguese had these slaves on the ship, probably going to take them to South Africa or somewhere, um, a British privateer, meaning a guy that had his own ship, he intercepted the Portuguese ship, and he had permission from the Dutch. It's called a letter of marque, and it gave him permission to attack the Portuguese ship, who the Dutch didn't really like. They were trying to get hold of the Congo, and they took the privateer, the Englishman. He took the slaves off the Portuguese ship, put it on his ship called the White Lion, and the White Lion sailed these slaves from the Congo Kingdom all the way to Jamestown, Virginia, Point Comfort, in 1619, just like in the movie Leave the World Behind. And that started the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade in the Americas. So the Bible, Christ even tells us that Jerusalem shall be compassed with armies, and you will be captured by the sword and led away as slaves into all nations. Christ was telling us what's going to happen, and it did happen. So nowhere in history did armies come to Jerusalem in the Middle East, and they took Israelites and put them on slave ships, and then I guess they got in the Mediterranean Sea and just rolled past the Strait of Gibraltar. No, that never happened in any of the history books. The Romans didn't record it, the Greeks didn't record it, and when they recorded anything, even Josephus, they did not use the word ships, which in the Hebrew is oniyah. It's not there. So Christ was even letting us know that, okay, if you understand your history, no ships took the Israelites from the Middle East, or let's say the Gaza Strip, because that's where the coastline is. No ships took any of us from that area of the world. We were taken from the Central African and West African coastline of the Atlantic Ocean. Yes. So we have to start to look at reality and understand that Africa holds the key.